O'Donnell is CBS's expensive news actress. So CBS Evening News anchor Norah O'Donnell is in third place in the ratings, but sources at the network gripe that she's got a first-class attitude, even as she faces getting sidelined by her sharp-elbowed bean-counting boss. CBS News co-president Niraj Kamlani, who has been slashing costs in a bid to make the network profitable, is eyeing O'Donnell, who reportedly makes between $6 million and $8 million a year, but pretty much you could just basically say like $7 million a year, and whose contract is set to expire this spring, sources told The Post, and by The Post we mean the New York Post. The next big decision from him is revamping the evening news, said a CBS insider who explained that the network can find a cheaper alternative to be last in the ratings. It's not a moneymaker, a second source said, adding that O'Donnell's toxic behavior is weighing the show down. Speculation that her days are numbered has surged since the onset of the Russia Ukraine war, and O'Donnell is the only evening TV news anchor who isn't in Eastern Europe, which has taken a toll on ratings. For the week of February 28th, CBS total viewers sank to less than 5.1 million, trailing NBC's 7.4 million and ABC's 8.8 million. Nielsen said. Prior to the war, O'Donnell was reaching around 5.6 million to 5.3 million viewers a night. So David Muir, Lester Holt, and Anderson Cooper are all in Ukraine. Where's Norah? We are in the middle of a war and she's reporting from Washington, D.C., said the source. Either she didn't want to go or leadership didn't want her to go. It's bad either way. Meanwhile, CBS Mornings anchor Tony Dokopel, rumored as a possible successor to O'Donnell, has been reporting from Poland and appearing on her show nightly. Sources said O'Donnell is finally being sent to Poland this weekend and will report from there on Monday, but some insiders say it's too late. The 48-year-old anchor's The Devil Wears Prada routine includes a full dress rehearsal of the evening news half an hour before the show airs, an often tense ritual that has seen O'Donnell chewing out dressing room stylists over her hair and makeup, sources said. And another way to really think about this, right? Like you're basically chewing out people who are trying to help you to look better than you do for people who don't actually care about you while they watch the news. Something to think about. There was an incident last year in the studio where she ranted about how her bronzer was wrong. One insider said, noting that her hair and makeup staff take the brunt of her tantrums and have been known to end up in tears. Now, if that is the case, that's pretty messed up, right? Like, why would you insult the people, again, who are trying to help you to make yourself look better for the camera? You're going to put them down, right? It's like it doesn't make any sense. So we are in the middle of a pandemic and people are dying. She's a news actress, another insider said, noting that the dress rehearsals are very unusual for news broadcasts, especially for an anchor who's 3 years into a job. A third added that the show's producers used a quirky routine as a way to coach the robotic O'Donnell and make her look more human by critiquing how she delivers the news and reads from the teleprompter. Which, by the way, for those that don't know how these news anchors really do their job, they literally are sitting down with like a foot pedal that is controlling a teleprompter telling them exactly what to say. They could reverse it, they could speed it up, but they are basically reading a teleprompter. Another way to view it, they are literally doing exactly what I'm doing, basically. I'm like literally reading text on a screen. That is literally what they are doing, reading text on a screen. And yet, they put people down who are trying to make themselves look better, like literally trying to make them, the news anchor, look better, and they're getting paid, these news anchors, millions of dollars, and they are putting down people who don't even get paid even a tenth of what she is. Like, it is absolutely insane. You don't put down people like that. It's just wrong. So some of O'Donnell's staffers in DC won't miss her while she's gone. Insiders said O'Donnell has a $65,000 a year wardrobe allowance, and she is particular about which designers she wears. Because here's the thing, right? Like, anyone watching the news ever cares about what designer clothing you wear. Like, that is so absurd. No one cares. No one cares. How about you literally just say what the hell is going on in the news cycle? My lord. And by the way, having a $65,000 a year wardrobe allowance is more money than some of those makeup staff that she put down's whole annual salary. Keep that in mind, right? So it's a clothing allowance. Every news anchor has one. That figure is incorrect. O'Donnell's publicist, Cindy Berger, said declining to provide a specific number. Now, here's the thing. Because they did not give a specific number, one might be able to assume the other way. Like, oh, okay, it's not $65,000 a year. It's actually $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year. Because if they said the exact number and it was less than 65,000, they would just say that, which means that it most likely is higher than $65,000. So, wow, you're going to spend all that money for what? So recently, O'Donnell posted a photo of herself on Instagram sporting a black Oscar de la Renta bow belt fitted wool jacket that retails for $2,700 at Nordstrom at a time when CBS News is going through major cuts, sources said. So O'Donnell's daily demands also include having her Gucci slides waiting in front of her dressing room door so she can put them on as soon as she is off the set. I am vehemently refuting these outrageous and sexist claims, Berger emailed in response to questions about her client's wardrobe and treatment of staff. The dress rehearsals have likewise rankled the network's journalists who claim that O'Donnell uses them to exert outsized control over broadcasts, scrapping segments at the last minute as she fusses over her appearance. A news anchor typically might go over a few segments or scripts, but O'Donnell requires everyone from the producers, reporters, and editors to run through the entire program. Not only does that mean the segments must be finished early and are thus not as polished, but it also gives O'Donnell the chance to tear up the segments. The rehearsals are an excuse to blow up packages 15 minutes before the show, one source griped. She changes the words to segments. Everyone has a stroke. Now, insiders say O'Donnell is facing heat from Kamlani, who was hired last year to revamp the organization. As previously reported by the New York Post, Kamlani's gruff, exacting management style has ruffled feathers at CBS, leading to the departure of a slew of well-respected execs and journalists, including London bureau chief Andy Clark, who left amid a spat over the cost of extracting Afghan journalists and fixers who worked for CBS. The exec and O'Donnell began bumping heads last year when the Post first reported that CBS has been quietly searching for O'Donnell's replacement ahead of her contract expiring this spring. And here's the thing you got to keep in mind too, right? Like, all these news companies know, like, hey, we're spending how much on this specific news anchor? Oh, and their ratings dropped by how much percentage? maybe we should get like a cheaper replacement, or even if they were to replace them with someone who might cost them more money, that person might end up actually bringing more viewers, right? Because sometimes the popularity of a person is actually very valuable. So at the time, Kamlani denied a potential move or anchor shakeup, telling the Post there are no plans to move the evening news from Washington. Norah's presence in Washington has elevated the CBS evening news coverage on all fronts: politics, breaking news, to big interviews, including Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen just last week. By the way, Janet Yellen sucks at her job based off what she has done recently. Her reporting on the military and domestic abuse has won awards and changed policies in Washington. And in addition to making headlines, the program is gaining audience share. So tensions further escalated in January when CNN reported that Kamlani approached former MSNBC anchor Brian Williams at least twice about the gig. O'Donnell's camp was shaken and very angered by the reports, a person with knowledge said. They feel like Niraj is devaluing Norah and the credibility of the network, the source said. Some people inside CBS believe that reports about Kamlani shopping for a news anchor could be a clever tactic to get O'Donnell to take a massive pay cut. But the consequence of that is that CBS looks stupid if they resign the anchor after trying to replace her, one source noted. When asked publicly about O'Donnell's job security, Kamlani told Deadline in January that CBS has no current plans to change what it is doing, but sources doubted the exec's words. I don't know if Niraj can make the final decision, but he's going to bring ratings data to George Cheeks and Bob Bakish, the source said, referring to the CEOs of CBS and his parent, Paramount Global. Norah's contract is up in May. There's time. And this is the reality of the situation, because a lot of these news anchors that you are watching, the only value they have for these news companies is not what they say, it's not the news that they report on, it is purely how many eyeballs can they generate on a consistent basis per week. Because the thing to really understand, like, it doesn't even matter necessarily like how many like hits or clicks that they get like online or anything like that. The money, the big money for all these news anchors are from primetime TV. And we're talking easily like hundreds of millions of dollars for these news companies, right? Because the amount of revenue that they generate is vastly different on TV than it is on YouTube, on podcast, all that kind of stuff, right? Their big money is through TV by their company sponsorships like Pfizer, Moderna, all that kind of stuff, right? Like those types of sponsorships by massive, massive corporations, that is where they get the money, and that is solely based on their ratings, not necessarily other factors, right? This is why, for example, YouTubers, there's some YouTubers out there that are making like millions of dollars a year, right? But they are getting like 10 to 20 to maybe even 100 times the viewership of these news anchors per day, right? So that's something to really think about. It's like, wow, the discrepancy in where the actual big money is vastly different. Now it is recently changing because you have the podcaster Joe Rogan who had the 100, well, technically $200 million contract. You had the Call Her Daddy girl who had like I think a 40 or $60 million contract for podcasting on Spotify. So you're getting these more exclusive deals on these internet apps, these platforms that are basically starting to change the amount of money that some of these people are making. But it's just something to really understand. It's like a lot of those news anchors, those talking heads that you see on these news channels are making close to eight figures or above it spouting absolute nonsense about really nothing, about news that is basically worthless because they are able to generate eyeballs on primetime TV for big corporations. Something to really think